Hello! Hello, beings, creatures, human children of the new era. Okay, let's play a game. Imagine for a moment that you are a young creature living sometime in the future. Things have gone really wild on the planet you call home. And then, by some strange, utterly unexpected twist of life, you stumble upon the recordings of your grandmother or great-great-grandmother, someone from your ancestry sending you a thread from far, far away. She was, more than anything else, a woman deeply, fully, absolutely in love with God. That would be me. A love that has been with me forever and ever and ever and ever. As far back as I can remember, I have been in love with God, and I have always wanted to come closer and closer. And my whole life has been this journey, this longing, this curiosity. Surrendering to that longing has led me to some very peculiar discoveries. Peculiar indeed, extraordinary, fascinating. More than anything, it has woven together some incredible stories. Stories that have carried me across the world, from deserts to sacred temples to the heart of the Amazon rainforest. And these stories, they create kind of a portal. I mean, first of all, they're genuinely good stories. But they also point toward connections that challenged everything I thought was possible. They point toward something that could redefine anyone's understanding of reality and humanity's trajectory. Wait, that sounds incredibly grandiose, doesn't it? They point toward something that could redefine anyone's understanding of reality and humanity's trajectory. But the thing is, it's actually true. Very, very, very true. It happened to me, and it has happened to others who have stepped through this portal. Now, I'm not saying it will happen to you, only that it could, if these stories are meant for you, or perhaps if you allow them. And if they do, actually, if they do, then that is very good news for you. Very, very good news. Indeed. Here we go. Episode 1. A little girl searching for God. So, as far as I can remember, I was looking for God. The first memory I have of this search... Now, before I say that, I was born in an atheist family. In my house, it was not well seen, God and everything that comes with God concepts. My parents were two people raised in very Catholic environments, like castrating and like the dark side of religion. They lived through the dark side of religion. And when they had kids, they decided that they weren't going to inflict that upon their kids. And my father was a man who believed in science and psychoanalysis and medicine and all these things. He was very intellectual in a way. He said that God was a construct made by humanity out of fear of death. But as far as I can remember, literally as far as I can remember, I believed in God. And I had this deep desire of knowing God and meeting God. And I just knew there was something out there. The first memory I have of this is from when I was 7 years old. I was with someone else, I don't know who it was, and my mom. And my mom said that she was going to go out and I wanted to go out with her, and she didn't let me. She was like kind of, I don't know, in a state. She went out, she came back soon after, And when she came back, she dropped a newspaper on the table. And I had just learned to read. So when the newspaper dropped on the table, I saw the picture of someone that I knew. She was a very loved person in my family. She was a good friend of my mom. And I looked up to her like my big sister. And I saw her picture, and then I read, Viridiana la triste, descanse en paz. And I asked my mom, what does descanse en paz mean? Rest in peace. And she tells me it means that she has died. And I went into a shock. And I turned around, and I walked up to my bedroom, and I closed the door behind me. And I knelt down, and I started to pray. I remember just like myself kneeling down behind my bed and putting my little hands like this. And then the door opened. And I remember I went like this, like I had been caught doing something that one must not do. And my mom told me something, and I told her like I made something up. And that's the end of the scene. That's what I remember. So from this little memory, what I know that at the age of 7, I already prayed in the hiding. And I already knew that praying was prohibited in my house. So without having anyone to really like guide me in this yearning and in this search and in this desire, I looked where I could. I searched in different doors. Like I remember scenes from my childhood. I remember scenes like we moved, shortly after that, we moved to a little apartment that was right in front of a church, la iglesia de San Jacinto. And I would just lie to my mom. I would tell her, I am going to my friend's house and I'm going here and I'm going there. And I would just walk into the garden. It's a church that has a beautiful outdoor garden with like stone structures. And on the outside there was like this image or statue of the Virgin set on the wall of stone, and I would just sit there for hours just talking to her and sharing my feelings and just deeply asking, show me, show me how, show me where, show me. I was looking for signs. I was looking for signals. My grandma, who was religious and who prayed the rosary and who like she was like, my mom had told her she had like a full-on strict prohibition to teach me anything. So whenever I asked her anything about God, she would tell me, no, porque tu mamá me regaña. Your mom will tell me off, so I cannot teach you. I cannot share anything of this. So I kind of built this relationship by myself. Now, I think in these stories that I'm going to share with all of you, this is a very important ingredient because I had no agenda, I had no like predisposition of finding anything either in the Christian background or Jewish or whatever. I was just like really craving for some sort of guidance, really craving for some sort of answer of just, God, where are you? Like, show me. So I was attending this church, and then sometimes I would also go in. Sometimes I would go in and just sit there and look at these images and just the silence in there. I loved the silence in there. I would sit there for really long periods of time. If you think I was 7, 8, 9 years old, I would just go in there and kneel down and pray. And sometimes I would stay through the Mass. And I didn't understand anything I didn't understand anything. I didn't really follow what was being said. But then there's this moment in the middle of the Mass where people stand up and they make a line, and they go to the priest, and the priest gives them something in their mouth. And people go back and sit down, and just something was happening there. Something was happening there, and I wanted that. So I found out that in order to be able to do that, not anybody could just go and do that. In order to do that, you had to go through a process called the First Communion. And some of my friends were already getting their First Communion. And the First Communion was this process where kids would go to some sort of Sunday school or something. And then there was this big mass where they would get their First Communion, and there was like a dress and a party and everything. And it was like this moment where for the first time they would stand up and get into that line and receive this communion. And I really wanted this, like really, really strongly from the bottom of my heart. But I knew, híjole, my family was not going to be very happy about this. But I gathered the courage. And one day we're sitting at the table for lunch, my mom, my two brothers, and myself. And I tell my mom, Mom, I want to do my First Communion. No. I'm never going to allow this to happen. This is like you're out of your mind. I'm not going to allow these people to put these ideas in your mind. It's all about the guilt trip and the manipulation and the this and the that and the church and the stories and the da-da-da. And she really thought, she really thought, because she didn't know that I spent so many hours and years going to church and searching, and I didn't talk about this because God was prohibited, right, in my house. So when I come with this, she tells me that I just want the party and the big dress, and it's not going to happen. She's not going to allow these people to put these horrendous ideas in my mind. And I go, and I'm convinced that I need to do this. I need to find a way to do this. I have no idea where or how to talk to someone. I know that my grandmother is not going to be part of this. So one day I'm sitting in church, and it's the Mass, and it's a moment when people stand up and go for their communion. And I get in line. And when it's my turn, I tell the priest, quiero comulgar, pero mi mamá no me deja hacer la primera comunión. I just tell him, I want to do this, but my mom won't let me do my First Communion. I was looking for a conversation. I wanted to know, it was just how do I do it? And I don't remember the face of this man, but I remember the sweetness, the tenderness, the energy of the moment. And he just told me, this is your First Communion. He put that thing, and I opened my mouth, and I received my First Communion. And I went to sit down by myself, and I knelt down, and I have no words to describe what happened there, but something happened. Anyway, it happened, a story happened, right? Then when I was in my teenage years, there was this apparently crazy professor. He was hired to teach us Spanish, and he taught us everything but Spanish. We would do these astral journeys, and he would have all of us go into these trance states and close our eyes, and he would talk to us about the dimensions and the chakras. And the school was kind of divided into two. Those of us of course I was in that band. Those of us who absolutely believed everything that this person said and felt that it was like the most fascinating thing we had ever encountered. And the rest who thought this person was absolutely out of his mind and completely crazy. And anyway, he ended up being fired from the school. But I learned some very interesting things. And after school, he organized this little workshop or group for those of us who were like really into these stories. And it was in the garden of a really close friend of mine. Anyway, at that time I was just praying in my own way, just asking God, like, how, where, tell me. So I got into these classes, this learning to connect with my own energy and to ask questions and to listen to signs became stronger. And in that period of time, I had my first, and probably to this day, my strongest, how should I call it, out of the ordinary experience. So I was in my dad's house, speaking on the phone with a friend in whose garden we took these classes. And suddenly the lights went out. And for some like unknown reason, I felt like this was a cue. And I told him, tonight, something's going to happen tonight. The lights went out, something's going to happen tonight. And he was like, what's going to happen tonight? You're crazy. And I'm like, no, I know something's going to happen tonight. So I go back home at night and it's time to go to bed. And I go to bed and I wake up in the morning and nothing happened. And I wake up in the morning like, no. Something was going to happen. I'm going to go back to bed because something was meant to happen. So I go back to bed and I sleep again. And I wake up and nothing happened. and then I'm like, no, something's going to happen. You need to go back to bed. So I go back to bed and I sleep again. And I don't know how many times this happened, but in one of those, I go to bed. I'm like this, lying on my bed. And I start listening to this incredibly loud sound, like the turbine of a plane, like super real, super strong, and like there. I get scared. I try to move and I cannot move. I cannot move my body. I'm perfectly conscious of where I am. I'm conscious of my body, of my bed, of this. And then I'm like, okay, now it's happening. This is what was going to happen. So I cannot move my body. I'm listening, I'm hearing this super loud sound. And then I have the vision of the garden of my friend where we took these lessons. And I start seeing myself going above and rising and rising and rising above earth. And I see the garden from above. And then I go into somewhere. And I'm perfectly conscious that I'm in this state, like my body is there. I've gone up here. And then I start seeing faces and images of all kinds of places and faces of people of like all nationalities, all latitudes and all times, like flashes and flashes of images. And then at some point, everything goes dark. And then I just see like this violet magenta little point, like my mental, like, like my screen, my inner screen. And I see this point in a dark background, like night, going like this in a half a circle. And I knew that the other half circle, like it was doing a full circle, but I could only see half. So I'm seeing this little magenta point. And slowly, when this magenta point comes out, it became already like a little shape. And it starts, every time it goes out, it starts transforming. And it's becoming like the aura of a person. And once it comes out like a perfect formed aura of someone, the image changes. And I'm lying down in some sort of bed. And there's a ray going through me, like trying to find its center. I'm lying down and there's this ray like changing color from I don't remember if it was green to blue or blue to green, but in the end, this ray is going perfectly in the middle. And then I hear two voices, the voice of a man and the voice of a woman that are standing behind me. So I'm lying down, they're standing behind me. And the man is speaking in English and the woman is speaking in Spanish. And they're not arguing, but like agreeing. What should we speak to her in? Should we speak in English? Should we speak in Spanish? And then she says, no, we're going to speak in Spanish. And then she starts speaking to me in Spanish. And she tells me something about the 4 Zoroasters. And I receive this message of the 4 Zoroasters. And then I kind of like, I know that's the end. And then I start seeing my body come down back into the garden of this friend. And then I feel myself back into my body and I try to move and I can move. I touch my face, and that was the end of the dream. And I go straight to the phone to call this friend, and I'm crying, just like in this emotion that I cannot describe. I tell him about the dream. Neither of us understand anything and what this means. He doesn't know who Zoroaster is either. I didn't know who Zoroaster was. And then we hang up, and I go to my dad's encyclopedia. Back in those encyclopedia, pre-internet Wikipedia days. I go to the Encyclopedia Britannica and I look up Zoroastro. And I find out that Zoroastro was the first prophet that we have register of. He's the first one that we actually know that said God is one. What we know, like archaeologically kind of knowledge, is that cultures believed that there were many gods. There's the god of the clouds, there's the god of the rain, there's the god of the sun, there's the god of the water. And then Zoroaster came and he said, there is one God. God is one. And all these are just aspects of this one God. And he said that this one God makes itself present more strongly in fire, more strongly than anywhere. Like, of course, like God is in everything, but fire is like this vehicle of the presence of this divine one that includes everything that there is. Throughout the years, then I learned like more things about Zoroaster, but this is like the one thing that I learned at this time, that it's about one God, and that this God is in fire, and in everything that this God is in fire, and that this Zoroaster was the first one to state that. Zoroaster lived in what today is Iran, what was ancient Persia. And sometime after that, I continued like exploring and I continued searching. And this was like a first very like strong glimpse, but I continued my search and I continued doing meditations and like finding wherever I could things here and there. And then 2 other things happened I was 14 at that time. In the time of the dream, I was 14. And then a few years later, I don't know how much time passed, I had another experience. I was in a meditation. And then I heard this voice repeat like the words, Ishtar, Ishtar, Ishtar. And again, I go and look up and I find out that this is a goddess also related to this part of the world. And then at some other point, a few years later, I'm again another meditation, and I see this person, like she's covered, and she tells me, I'm Ikra from the Persian tribe. she tells me in my meditation. So all these arrows pointing towards the Middle East, and I just made it my arrow. That was my purpose. I wanted to go to Persia. I wanted to go to the Middle East. I started saving more or less at the age of 15. And back in those days, it was, it was, it really was a completely different world, I was born in Mexico City. This was the 80s, and Persia was like, who knows anything about Iran and Persia? And, like to travel there as a young teenager on my own, it was like, how on earth I was going to do that? I had no idea of anything. There was no, no Google, look it up. But I started saving. I worked after school tutoring children younger than myself. And I kept on searching, and I kept on looking, and I kept on like asking for signs, and God, tell me how, tell me where. And I had this very, very strong thing about service. It wasn't only like I want to know you, but I want to serve you. Like I want to, so like my friends were like already figuring out what they were gonna study. And I wanted to study visual arts, but I also felt like I couldn't do this because okay, this is what I want to study, but what I really, really want is I want to go into this service to God, but I had no religion. And I was like, maybe I just go and try to become a nun or what to do, but I also want to go to Persia. Anyway, I felt that my answers were going to come to me there. And I heard about someone who had been in a kibbutz in Israel. And this tells you how knowledgeable I was of politics and that kind of stuff, that I thought, well, that's great. I can go to a kibbutz, that's close, like I saw the map, that's very close to Iran. I can go to a kibbutz, and then from there, I can just it's going to be easier to figure my way into Iran being in Israel. This is what I thought. So this person that had been in a kibbutz gave me like the coordinates, and you go to this place, and it was very organized. I went to this place to look for information. They told me like, these are the requisitos, you need to do this and this and this and this. And I was getting ready. To go to a kibbutz. My plan was to go to the kibbutz, land in the Middle East, and then from there I would find my way to Persia. So I was doing that. And I was also getting ready for art school. I thought there was this possibility of saving a spot in art school, leaving for a year, and then coming back and do art school for like fully. This was my plan. So I'm saving money. I'm like completely sure that I'm going to find my answers in Persia. I'm getting ready to go to the kibbutz. And I'm attending these drawing lessons once a week. And these lessons, they were in a circle. It was a circle, and in the middle, there was this nude model. And then one day I go to my lessons. And on the other side, no es cierto, estoy mentirando. It was actually the first lesson. I went on a night out partying with a friend, and I found... No, ya me acordé, espérate, esto lo voy a tener que editar. No, esto lo voy a editar. Yo ya iba a esas clases y luego dejé de ir. Por fodonga, geminiana, procrastinadora, dejé de ir a las clases. Y luego un día, Tata llegó a mi casa así de, ay, acompáñame, ya me metí en un pedo, tengo que ir de Reven con estos dos itamitas, pero no quiero, pero acompáñame. Yo estaba ya en mi casa en pijama, bueno, ándale, va, me he visto, me voy con ella de Reven al Zócalo, fuimos al Zócalo, era no sé qué de muertos, y fue, ya sabes, de esas noches de aquellas, pero fuimos a una galería, y de la galería uno de estos cuates dice, vamos a la cantina que está aquí atrásito, el nivel se llamaba.
Ok.
Y entonces vamos al nivel, Y me encuentro al profesor de dibujo. Me dice, güey, eras buenísima, ¿por qué dejaste venir? Regresa. Y entonces regreso a las clases and there we go again. So maybe I don't edit it. Maybe I don't have to edit this. Maybe I put this as a subtitle. Maybe this goes in Spanish, ni modo. Anyway, so.
Es muy buena historia. Cantina involucrada es buena historia.
¿Mandé?
Cantina involucrada es muy buena
Cantina
historia.
involucrada es buena historia. I think might just put subtitles and just keep it here because it's just part of the story. Anyway, and when I go back, there's this new student who is sitting right across. So every time I look at the model, I see him behind. And he is the most beautiful creature I had ever set my eyes upon. Who is this man? And he looks at me, and every time that we look at the model, we're just like looking at each other. And when the lesson ends, he walks towards me. And I knew exactly what he was going to tell me, so I opened my bag, and before he even comes, I take out a cigarette. I know he was going to ask me for a cigarette. And I'd go like this, and he laughs, and he tells me, I was going to ask you for a cigarette. And I say, I know. And we walk out together. And we start this conversation, just like we start talking as if we had known each other forever and ever. And I just know this person is the one. And that meeting changed the course of the search in a very interesting way that I will leave for our next episode. I'm so happy that we began.